What's going on, guys? Week 12 at BSing Sports. I'm Ryan. Bill with me, as always.
What's going on?
We have an array of topics to cover today. As I've previewed to a couple people, this episode could probably take 2 hours. So sit back, relax. Hopefully your ride to work or wherever you're listening to takes a little bit longer than you planned. We've got, we're going to start out with general sports today, which is a little unusual because we usually end with that. Then we're going to cover some really unusual stuff, basketball. And that's because the Sixers are the number one seed. They did just win their first round playoff matchup. And we got a lot of Philly fans back home that do watch basketball. So it is worth talking about. We got a little bit of playoff hockey, a couple, awards finalists were announced. And then we have MLB and the MLB draft preview because baseball season is in full swing and cool stuff happens every week. Bill, start us out with sports fans or city fans. What is the difference?
So yeah, you and I got in this conversation last week with my old man, discussing very specifically the Dak Prescott scenario in Dallas. My dad, an older gentleman, hardcore Eagles fan, is blinded by his hatred of the Cowboys to be able to acknowledge the true sports that are going on there. Meaning, he made the comment that the Cowboys were not any better off with. Nice hat.
Yeah, we gotta show where our allegiances are. If you're listening to this on Spotify, you might as well just tune in on YouTube for the first 5 minutes so you can see what happened. But anyway, go ahead. Yeah,
so the conversation aroused that he said that the Cowboys were not going to be better off with Dak Prescott at quarterback than they were with Andy Dalton or anybody else. And I adamantly disagreed with him because Dak Prescott is a better quarterback at this point in their careers than Andy Dalton is. And it made me start thinking about like people who like Ryan and I who are actual sports fans and can like separate our passion for a city out of our feelings for a specific player or team. Because I mean, I don't like the Cowboys. I've said it several times on our podcast. But the reality is I can look at that team and say, yeah, that offense is deep. That's a deep roster. Whereas passionate sports city fans will always just be like, no, they're a crap team because they're a crap team. Ryan, give me your opinions on that.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. And there tends to be a lot of those in Philadelphia. Obviously, I don't really follow too many other cities' hardcore fan bases. So I'm going to assume that it's like that everywhere. But I agree. There's a difference between just rooting for your teams, which is fine. Obviously it's okay to root for your teams, and being a little bit realistic. The Cowboys offense is going to be borderline elite with Dak Prescott. I mean, they're not going to put up the same kind of record-breaking numbers that they did last year before he got hurt. It's, not realistic to expect that. I shouldn't say that they're not going to do that, but that is a very deep wide receiver core. Dak Prescott has absolutely outplayed his draft position as a fourth-round pick and, has made a name for himself. He's a very good quarterback in this league. Whether he's worth $40 million a year is another debate. There is a huge difference, and sometimes it gets a little annoying as a general sports fan like myself, particularly in baseball conversations, when you get into those hardcore all about my fan base or all about my team fans, and it's annoying. They're like brick walls.
Yeah, and I think that's where I was trying to go with this topic to begin with. Was it's difficult to have a conversation with passionate city fans versus intelligent sports fans is I think where I was going with it to begin with. I'm glad we circled back to it. But I appreciate fans who are able to, okay, look, I don't like that team, but that team is good. And be able to identify players on the opposite roster that are actually going to be talented and stuff like that. And I just appreciate that as a full-blown sports fan in general.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. The reason the Cowboys lose a lot of games is not because of their offense. In most cases, the defense has been terrible the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But there have been times where the Cowboys offense has come up small in big spots. So I guess that's the knock on everybody is, with the way everybody is in the league, the media, it's all quarterback driven. I guess Dak doesn't have a clutch gene, so to speak, but that's up for debate too, because that offense is very good.
Yeah. Moving on, as Ryan already pointed out, we're going to touch on basketball just a little bit here. So the 76ers were the 1 seed.
Hang on a second, Bill. We're getting a topic about just some general sports talk.
Okay.
Got a question from John Ferris. Those of you might know him.
Thank you, John.
Those of you that don't, you'll know him. He's sending us in a question right now about general sports, so we're going to talk about it for a little bit.
All right. So the question here is, I'm going to let Ryan answer first, then I'll follow up. The question is, with the sports world going back to normal now, what are your opinions on all the incidents that have occurred during the past few weeks with fans being back at games and causing a lot of issues? It's funny because it's in our general sports situation, and I think it kind of rounds into our basketball conversation perfectly well. So I think what he's specifically talking about is the Russell Westbrook thing in Philadelphia a little while back.
Well, and then there was a Kyrie Irving incident in Boston,
That's
and
right,
then
yeah.
there was the fan running on the court in Philadelphia. There's been quite a few incidents, and people are just acting like animals. I don't understand this. What's cool about you getting absolutely spear tackled by a security guard in the middle of a basketball game? Or why are you a hardcore fan, hardcore sports fan, because you threw a water bottle at some guy, or you
Dumped a bag
said
of
some
popcorn.
race. What?
Or dumped a bag of popcorn on
Oh
some.
yeah, well, he threw the Boston dude threw a water bottle at Kyrie. The bag
Yeah.
of popcorn was Either way, like how does that make you a hardcore fan? How does that make you hard? Like why are we still quote unquote throwing snowballs at Santa Claus? It was 50 years ago. We can move past that, especially as a Philly fan base. We have such a bad rap for that stuff.
I think on some level, people take it as a point of pride to continue the bad rap for that stuff in Philadelphia, specifically. I can't speak to the Boston situation. But overall, yeah, people are just acting like assholes. And I just don't think it's a necessity. I know I shouldn't say that on my podcast, but that's the reality of it.
Yeah.
Is Russell Westbrook, the specific Russell Westbrook one, he was leaving the court because he had injured his ankle and somebody dumped popcorn on him. What are you gaining from that? Where's the benefit in you doing that? There isn't one. You're just being stupid.
And then Russell Westbrook wanted to fight him. Like, I think they should have let him fight him.
Yeah,
You want to dump popcorn on me? Like, let's do this, man. But as far as the Kyrie incident up in Boston, he had addressed even his time in Boston that he was getting some racial slurs, and that's not the first time I've heard that from a Boston team. I've heard a lot of opposing players, specifically from the Orioles back in the early 2010s, talk about how the Boston Red Sox fan base also kind of does the same thing, particularly Adam Jones, the center fielder that used to play for the Orioles. Mm-hmm. He's come out and openly spoken about how the Boston fan base tends to be a little bit racist. And, when Kyrie comes out and says it, multiple athletes have come out and said it, that there's got to be some truth to it. And that's unnecessary, especially with everything that's going on in terms of race nowadays. Like we got to move past this.
I'm totally with you on that. Absolutely. 100%.
But yeah, that was a good question, John. It definitely does spark some conversation. People just need to grow up is what it comes down to.
Yeah. 100% people need to grow up.
But speaking of basketball,
before you move into that, the way John had arranged that with Ryan and I is we spoke a couple of nights ago on Talking 215's live stream, and he asked if we'd be able to take a question during our podcast. So if any of you want to do that with us, we can tell you when we're going to be streaming, and we'd be happy to have questions. We're going to try and start moving live here in the next couple of weeks. We got to figure it out. There's a lot of technical stuff. But for the time being, if you want to ask questions while we're live, we'd be happy to answer them so you can see our natural reactions. You can send them to us while we're live. Sorry, continue with the basketball, buddy.
Yeah, and we'll post in the Facebook group and on the page and whatnot when we're recording, because sometimes we record on Fridays, sometimes we record on Saturdays. So that way you guys can have your questions lined up if you have any. Back to basketball and sports. The 76ers did end up in the second round with a 4-1 series victory over said Washington Wizards. However, it did come at a price. MVP finalist Joel Embiid did injure himself. First off, what do you make of the Sixers this year, and what are their chances?
Without Embiid, well, of the Sixers this year, I did go back and do a little bit of research on them. They actually played pretty well, especially down the stretch. But losing Embiid, it's been the same story with him a lot over his career, where he's just a big athletic guy and he puts it all out there. He gets hurt a lot. Doc Rivers, the coach of the Sixers, said that he's optimistic that he'll be able to play if the Sixers make it deep. But I mean, you gotta get past the Hawks to make it deep. But I think they can still make a deep run, especially if Embiid comes back, but without him, it's going to be really tough.
Yeah, and just from what little I know about basketball, Bill and I don't really follow basketball, as I stated earlier. That's why it's the first time that we've talked about this on the show. The Sixers are a very good perimeter defensive team. They're a very good defensive team all around, but they're specifically good at the perimeter with Ben Simmons. He's always a defensive player of the year candidate. And the Hawks are an outside shooting team. Outside of Clint Capella down low, they don't really do much damage down in the paint. So they rely a lot on Trae Young and some outside shooters to do damage. And if the Sixers have good perimeter defense, even without Embiid, I'm not going to say they should be fine, because that's a big hole on the offensive side. but I think they can still win that series. 4-2 maybe. Maybe it goes to 7 games, but a lot of it's going to come to Simmons and how well he performs offensively. And as we know, a fan base, he's very inconsistent with that at times.
Yeah. We're going to move right forward into a little bit of hockey conversation before we talk about.
Speaking of finalists for awards.
Before we get into that, I'm sure everybody saw the Jake Evans hit the other night.
He got crushed.
So I would like to have your opinion, and then I'll go. One.
That's actually the topic I wanted to add. So I'm glad we're talking about it.
Perfect. One, was it a clean hit? Start there.
From the angle I saw from the backside, where you saw both players' numbers, it looked cleaner than it potentially looked on the front side. So when I first saw the video, I was like, really? Like I can see the major and the game misconduct for that, but I don't, from that angle, it did not look as unclean as people made it seem to be. It looked like a guy that was skating full force to prevent a guy from scoring an open net goal, and a guy scoring an open net goal with his head straight down on the ice.
At some point,
keep your head up there, Eric Lindros. I mean, Jake Evans.
At some point, Jake Evans needed to be aware that he's going to have to protect himself. You had 2 defensemen flying in from the circle, going full speed. The real time, the hit looked super vicious.
Yeah,
but it also didn't look malicious. Like, yeah, he hit him, but he didn't leave the ice. He didn't throw his body into him. He gave him, in my opinion, a pretty clean hit. It's unfortunate that Jake Evans got hurt. Moving into the next part of that, I love, I mispronounce this dude's name every single time I talk to him.
Nikolai Ehlers.
Thank you. Of the opposite team of the Jets, while Jake Evans was down and the training staff was trying to get to him,
Ehlers. It's one of those two.
Okay. Is barricading the fight and scrum that's going on behind him to prevent anybody from falling on Jake Evans, which I think is like 125% class act. So good for you, Ehlers.
Yeah, especially because Ehlers is not the biggest guy on the ice. But I have a couple things about the hit first. It was ruled a charging penalty. That's where the game misconduct came from. However, I don't believe that he left his feet before contact was made. When you lay a hit like that, of that capacity, legal or not, you're coming off the ice. Like, if you want to say, oh, his feet left the ice, well, the difference between a charge and a not is if his feet leave the ice before contact was made. And I don't believe that happened.
Yeah, I don't think it happened.
And secondly, people think, 4 games isn't enough. Mark Scheifele is not a dirty player. This is a first-time offender playing hard. And then there's another argument that people make saying, oh, well, the puck crossed the goal line, he should have stopped. He was flying down the ice, and you expect, I know he's basically an Olympic level skater. Most hockey players are, but do you expect him to stop on a dime like that? I think he killed him right after the puck crossed the line. He's not supposed to stop like that. I think he was trying to make a great play. Again, I haven't seen a front side view of this hit, so I can't necessarily tell whether that elbow came up or not. That may be the deciding factor, but from the backside, that hit just looked like Jake Evans needs to learn to keep his eyes up.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
And as far as Nikolai Ehlers goes, yes, that was very good for him. And he did a great job too, because nobody ended up tackling on Jake Evans and making the injury potentially worse. So hopefully Jake Evans does recover. And at the same time, hopefully he learns a lesson that he needs to keep his head up.
Yeah, something Lindros never learned.
Yeah, and what a shame, because Jake Evans could not touch Eric Lindros, since we're talking about people that can't skate with their head up. Moving in onto that, the Vesna finalists are out. That's the only finalists for awards that I've seen so far. And I'm sure we'll touch on more a little bit, in the coming weeks as the playoff winds down. But former Penguin and former hated rival of the Flyers, Marc-Andre Fleury is a finalist for the Vesna. Very good for Flower. He's there with Andrei Vasilevsky. And I don't remember who the third one is, but it doesn't really matter, because I think this is a 2-horse, 1-horse race.
So do I.
I think Vasilevsky's going to.
I got some stats on Fleury right here.
Okay.
So 36 games started, 26-10. Only 71 goals given up. That's a 198 goals a game against, which is extremely impressive throughout the duration of an entire season. I really don't even think it's a 2-horse race. I'm pretty sure Fleury's probably got it.
I disagree. I think it's Vazzy's.
Oh, okay. Well,
the only reason I say that is because there was a 62-game season this year, and Fleury did only play 36 games. He wasn't kind of the horse, where he was splitting time with Robin Leonard. But good, I mean, granted, sub 2 goals against average when you play most of the team's games is unbelievable.
Yeah. And a 930 save percentage. I mean, good for Marc-Andre Fleury. He's also in what I believe to be his 16th or 17th season in the NHL, which is even more impressive when you consider all the time his legs have been on the ice.
Well, now the interesting question gets raised. So Marc-Andre Fleury seems to be the horse for Vegas this year in the playoffs, whereas Robin Lehner was the horse for them last year. They can only protect one goalie.
Thinking you're protecting the younger of the two.
I don't know. Maybe they don't make the same mistake that the Penguins made and letting Marc-Andre Fleury go, because they sold out for Matt Murray and that didn't seem to work out.
That's a good point. That's a real good point. Man, I don't know. That's a good point. I'm gonna have to ponder on that one. That's a good point.
I'll look into that and
we'll make a prediction. I know he was really bitter about the Penguins not protecting him and then the Knights taking him. But I mean, he's been to the Cup since, so good for him.
Yeah, and Matt Murray is now playing in Ottawa, and he was absolutely terrible this year, as the Penguins have yet moved on again to Tristan Jarry. All right, but moving on from that, speaking of future award winners, Jacob deGrom, they'll probably just rename the Cy Young to the Jacob deGrom Award. His ERA is still under 1. I'm going to start keeping a days tracker. How many earned runs how many days since Jacob deGrom has allowed an earned run?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's got a .71 ERA right now, but he's only 4-2. The Mets, man. The Mets.
So you said his ERA is 0.71?
0.71.
All right. So to put that in context for some people, Shane Bieber had an incredible season last year, and it was shortened. They only played about a third of the games, a little bit more. So Bieber made 12 starts. He went 8-1 and had a 1.63 ERA, and that was an amazing season. So first off, deGrom's already lost more games than Bieber has, which is insane. And his ERA is less than half of that.
Yeah, 51 innings pitched. What's that? That's 4 total earned runs all season, right? My math is solid on that. Yeah, that's 4
something like that. Yeah, the Mets are really doing their best to screw this guy over. He's going to be one of those Hall of Famers that ends up with like 140 wins, and people are going to be like looking at his stats, like, how did he get in? And it's going to be like, well, you had to be there. Like,
yeah. Speaking of pitchers completely dominating for, sections at a time.
I want to say something real quick about deGrom. The thing that blows my mind about deGrom is he's a 2-pitch pitcher. Back when I was growing up, you couldn't be a starter as a 2-pitch pitcher. But I guess when your fastball is at 100 and you can hit a gnat's ass on the outside corner, and then your slider's at 93 and it disappears the way it does, you don't really need anything else.
Yeah, he's been consistently hitting 102. deGrom has been. So there's that.
Oh yeah. Okay. Hold up. Go ahead. What was the next topic?
Next topic. Speaking of pitchers who had dominated at one time or another, I'm sure everybody notices that Ryan and I are both rocking our Cliff Lees behind us. So we thought we would give Cliff Lee justice in the July of 2011 season when he went 5-0 with a 4.5 ERA, and pretty sure it was 1, 2, 3. He had 2 complete games in that span. He started 5 games. He won all 5 games, 0.45 ERA, and he had a complete game shutouts in 2 of them. So July 2011, Cliff Lee, one of the most dominant pitching performances consecutively that I've ever seen in my life.
And he was the second best pitcher on that roster. That's another key stat behind the late Roy Halladay. I'm sure we'll have an entire episode dedicated to Roy Halladay because, like deGrom, you could sit there and talk about that guy for hours.
Absolutely.
And speaking of incredible performances, this one not by an individual, but by a whole team, the Rays just changed the month of May to the month of Ray because they went 22-6. I didn't even know that they lost 6 games. Every time I looked at their box scores, they were it looked like sweeps.
Yeah, I mean, they which is funny because they ended May by beating the crap out of the Phillies for 3 games. And yeah, just unbelievable how good they played. And when I was watching those games with the Phillies, I was like, wow, this team is like really good. And you had originally had it, I think maybe you did it in a Facebook post where it said the Rays incredible May 22-6, and you were like, Blake who?
Yeah.
So it's funny because after they got yeah, go ahead.
He's not in a bad situation now, but I mean, the Rays certainly aren't missing him.
No, not at all. 22-6 in 1 month. That's incredible. So yeah, congratulations.
they're still vying for an AL East spot because that division is tight. They're not necessarily, they're not like 5 or 6 games up. They don't have like this big jump on teams ahead of them. They're still in the dogfight. The
Red
Sox
Sox
and
are
the
playing
Yankees
well.
aren't going away.
Yeah. Even the Blue Jays are playing well. The whole division is, well, not the whole division because there's the Orioles, but the rest of the division is really good.
I wonder if the Orioles wouldn't be so bad if they were in like a relatively like not as like if they were in the AL Central, like a division that doesn't have just like 2 or 3 powerhouse teams that are gonna steamroll everybody.
Would they compete?
I could see them losing. This is going to sound sad. I could see them losing less than 100 games. I could see them going like 72 and 90.
I guess that's an improvement from what they're going to do this year.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you play, the Yankees, the Rays, and the Sox 19 times each every year, 0-19 against each team is not like a realistic number, but at the same time, it kind of is going to feel like it when you go 6-13 against all 3 teams.
Yeah.
So speaking of baseball,
that's a good question. I'm gonna come back to that one. Go ahead.
Speaking of baseball, strikeouts are up, and as we know, but why? I asked this question because I was sent an interesting post by a friend on Instagram. Charlie Blackmon, the former center fielder, now right fielder of the Colorado Rockies, one of the very few good hitters in that organization, said, and I quote, "I'm tired of hearing people say that players only want to hit home runs. They're striking out because guys are throwing 97-mile-an-hour super sinkers or balls that go straight up with all this sticky stuff and the new ball spin rate." Let's get in a little bit into the pitching substance. We talked about it a little bit on 215 with JT Realmuto calling, for that to be the change in baseball. And then Josh Donaldson saying he was going to write a novel on all the pitchers that use illegal substances or substances that help them get an advantage on the baseball. Do you think that is most or, a majority of the reason why strikeouts are up, or is it more about the mentality of hitting?
I think it's the mentality of hitting. A couple of years ago, they were pushing this launch angle and all this other stuff, especially in the Phillies organization. We know it ruined Scott Kingery. But because of those things, like everybody's trying to preach or analytics and tell me that I have to launch a ball at a certain angle or I'm not going to get a hit. Now everybody's popping the ball up or they're striking out a ton because they're just not identifying spin. So, I mean, you can say that the pitchers are putting more spin on it because they have a substance, but if hitters aren't identifying spin, that's on the hitter.
I'm actually going to disagree. I do think that if enough pitchers are using substances than is initially thought, then I could totally stand behind the hitters and say, yeah, that's definitely why. Because regardless of your launch angle, even if you swing on a completely level plane, somebody's throwing 100-mile-an-hour sinker that breaks 8 inches away from you. That's going to be hard to hit or get a base hit off of. Like, you're just hoping to put that ball in play somewhere or foul it off. That's nasty. And guys are doing stuff with the baseball that looks, like a video game or a cartoon. Like it is a cause for concern. And an interesting fact, the MLB just upped their suspensions, which leads into another topic I want to talk about, but stand by. To 10 games. If you get caught with a banned substance, you are suspended 10 games as a pitcher. Garrett Cole, in his first start since that suspension was announced, gives up 5 earned runs in less than 5 innings, has a terrible outing, when previously in that season, he hadn't given up more than 2 earned runs. That a little suspect?
That specific instance is a little bit suspect, yes. But I still revert back to, as a hitter, you need to make an adjustment. And if they're not making adjustment, like I get it. You got guys throwing DeGrom, for instance, throws that 93-mile-an-hour slider that just completely bolts out of the zone. Yeah, it's going to be tough, but if you're picking up spin and you know that it bolts out of the zone, don't swing.
Well, then, at the same time, you should tell the pitchers from the steroid era that they need to adjust and start doing steroids too,
Yeah. I was a fan of all
the hitters have the advantage.
I was a fan of So while I agree, and this is another conversation that we could just roll right into, though. So yes, steroids help the ball go further. No, steroids do not help your hand-eye coordination. As a hitter, you still needed to pick up spin and hit the baseball. So I get it. Like, steroids made the ball go far. Swing, stick, ball go far. I get it. Still had to have the hand-eye coordination to do it.
Yeah, but in a business where you thrive making your money based off of success, if you give up 10 extra home runs that year that would have been flyouts on the track because guys are using steroids, their bodies recover faster from workouts, they're stronger, they can hit the ball harder and farther. You're giving up 5 to 10 home runs a year that would have been flyouts at the track. Maybe, like I said, on Talking 215, this is the pitcher's response to that kind of stuff. Maybe this was the pitcher's adjustment, and now it's just finally coming to light with the steroid era dead. That hardly anybody in the majors gets caught using steroids. I know some minor leaguers do, but that's because those guys are probably desperate.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and maybe it is just the pitcher's adjustment to all of that, and it's coming to light now. But up until this point, hitters were making the adjustment and hitting the ball. So, I mean, they didn't just start using illegal substances this year, like they didn't.
Yeah, no. This has probably been going on, since the prime of the steroid era. I'm tired of Barry Bonds clobbering 12 home runs off of me. Let me, go cheat like that. That's essentially what baseball became at one point, was just who could cheat better
and not get caught. 100%.
Yeah, and then with the steroid era dead, this is the result. Hitters are getting dominated. Granted, I know they deadened the ball this year, but in terms of strikeouts have been up for years now. And now we're at the point where the last couple of years, hitters are striking out more in a month than they're getting hits.
Yeah, I mean, we're suffering through that as a Phillies fan, where a team's striking out 15 times a game, so that's wonderful.
Yeah, and we're not even the worst in the league. Actually, that the day that Zach Wheeler started against the Rays, I took the over for strikeouts in that game by a lot, because the A's actually lead the league in strikeouts while the Phillies lead the NL. So I was like, yeah, there's going to be a ton of strikeouts here, no doubt. But I wouldn't say it's all on the hitting process. I could say that's a part of it, but in reality, pitchers probably are using substance way more than we think they are, and it's got to be having an effect on these hitters for sure. Which leads me to my next point: 10-game suspension as a pitcher. As a relief pitcher, that's a little bit more detrimental, but as a starter, you just miss 2 starts. This is going to sound kind of unfair, but as a starter, do you think the penalty should be a little bit steeper?
Yes, I think
you're only missing 2 games compared to other people's 10.
Yeah, so as you said, a relief pitcher, it's more detrimental because they can be used every other day, every day, some of them. But for a starter, only missing 2 games is nothing. What you've done is you re-energize their arm and all that.
Yeah, that's basically a rest to freshen their arm up.
It should be a suspension that it's not you're out for 10 games, it's out you miss your next 5 starts. Like, you've been
scheduled. And I understand that the loophole with that is teams could be like, well, I schedule them 5 days in a row. Like, yeah, technically, but that's also bullshit. Like, we know that
there's ways to write the rules.
It should be every 5th day mathematically you miss like 3 or 4 games.
Yeah, that's how it should be. But saying, okay, well, you're suspended for 10 days as a pitcher, like, okay, that's fine, like, whatever.
Yeah. As a starter, like, oh no, like, what a shame.
Yeah, if my team's competing, I'll have a fresher arm down the stretch.
Yeah, and if my team's not competing, who cares? And I just thought that was interesting. Like, I know there's a lot of loopholes with that, and genuinely it seems unfair on the surface, but at the same time, it's also unfair that as a starting pitcher, you basically only sit 2 games versus, a relief pitcher. Maybe a good relief pitcher gets caught, they sit 7 of those 10 games. Or, fielders that they're even worse because they really do play every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. To me, I think there's got to be something about, the suspensions. And I know the MLB Players Association won't go for it, but it's just an interesting topic to talk about how unfair that really is.
Yeah, I mean, the Players Association is always going to do what's best for the players.
See the Houston Astros. If you pay your fees, you get protected.
Yeah.
We talked about that on Talking 215 too. I don't know if you were there for that.
I don't know. I was on for like 45 minutes, and then you came on and you were on for 45 minutes. So Jake, thanks for having us, by the way.
Yeah, go check it out. With that being said, we're
going into a topic that I am extremely unfamiliar with. So Ryan's pretty much going to take the reins here. I don't know how you want to go about it, so really I'm just gonna let you have it. I got the top prospects available for the MLB draft on my screen. I'd be happy to click and tell you some stats for guys if you want.
Yeah, so I'll give a little bit of preface. So for those of you that don't know, in baseball, the way scouting is done, it's called the 20/80 scale. So what that scale is is for where a player is at relative to their peers. They're graded 20 through 80 on certain aspects. Like, for example, pitchers are graded on their fastball, their breaking balls, their changeups, 20 to 80. 50 is average, meaning compared to their peers, this is an average pitch. Anything, above 50 is a little bit above average, and then 60, 65, it goes in scales of fives. And then 80 is obviously the best, and 20 means you probably just shouldn't play. But same thing with hitters. Their 5 tools: contact, power, fielding, speed, and arm strength are all rated on the 20 to 80 scale. Same deal, 50 being average. This draft class actually has some deep history of athletics, especially in the top 5 picks. Jack Leiter, his father, former MLB pitcher Al Leiter with 180 career wins, now an MLB Network analyst. And Kumar Rocker, his uncle, Tracy Rocker, was a defensive lineman for the Washington Redskins years ago. So that's why he looks like a defensive lineman, because defensive linemen seem to run in his family. He's a very big pitcher, both of which pitch on Vanderbilt's staff. With that being said, we're going to roll right into our preview. The top pick, it was Jack Leiter for a long time. Coming into this year, it was his first few starts. It was. Then he got roughed up a little bit, and then it was Jordan Lawler, who was a shortstop from Jesuit Prep in Dallas, Texas. But now, however, it is Marcelo Mayer, who is another shortstop in high school, which is kind of interesting to see 2 high schoolers at the top of the rankings. That doesn't often happen. Phil, do you want to give a take on that?
Yeah, so it doesn't happen a lot because a lot of times kids choose to go to college and get groomed in a more competitive environment than just the high school play. So the grading system, as Ryan already pointed out, 2080. Marcelo Mayer, he's got for hitting, he's got graded at a 60, 50 in running, 55 in fielding. He's got a 60 grade overall. But he's got average or above tools across the board. Start left-handed, throws right-handed. Like I said, I'm a little out of my element here.
Yeah.
He's not fast, but he can steal bags, which means he's intelligent. So good for him. Hard to judge that out of high school, in my opinion, but okay.
Yeah, especially with catchers' arms, they definitely tend to improve, because even, good catchers in high school and college tend to get moved to corner, infield, or outfield positions to save their career, especially if they're good hitters. I worked out with a dude, Matt Dias, that happened to him. He grew up as a catcher, and then when he got to the minor leagues, they moved him to first, third base. He plays for the Angels. So, that being said, I kind of wanted to touch on 2 guys that I'm hoping the Phillies will draft.
Cool,
one of them used to be ranked a little bit lower than the Phillies pick. I think he was the 17th, projected prospect, and that's Colton Cowser. He's primarily center fielder for Sam Houston State. He does everything, very well. He's an overall grade of 55, so you're going to notice a lot of 55s and 60s, and that's because the competition, the level of talent at this, nobody's going to be an 80 compared to their peers. It's very rare that you see somebody, that much better than everybody else at this level. But, he's a very good hitter. He's obviously got good speed. He plays center field. His arm strength could be a little bit better from what I've seen, but he's a very smart base runner with the potential for, 20 home runs in the majors. Very good hitter, like I said, and he's got decent speed. He's projected at number 10, where the Phillies are picking 13. But the guy that I really want the Phillies to get, and I've done a lot of research, I've actually watched a couple of this guy's starts, is Ty Madden from Texas, the number 9 ranked overall prospect. Every one of his pitches is above average. He throws a very good slider, he throws a good fastball, and he throws a good changeup, which is really good for young pitchers coming into the draft. He can control his pitches very well. His curveball needs a little bit of development, but overall, I like this guy. He competes. He throws strikes, which is important. You see a lot of young kids, their issue is that they walk a lot of batters, and that's just not the case with Ty Madden. He does throw strikes, and he stays in counts, and he will compete. Fastball sitting in the mid 90s, he can get it up there, but it's usually around 92, 93.
Yeah, I mean,
And
the thing I'm looking at right here says he's reaching 99 miles an hour, and it's more of a sinker, 99-mile-an-hour sinker this kid throws.
oh, must have improved from last year because I know I was watching him a lot for or his freshman year actually because COVID. But yeah, no, I like Ty Madden. If he's improved his velocity like that, no wonder he's in the top 10.
I mean, yeah, hopefully he falls to the Phillies. That'd be great.
Yeah, no, that's
Be
the
nice
guy
for
that I
us.
really have kept an eye on, and like is realistic to get. You know, like we'd all love Jack later, but he's the third ranked prospect for a reason. The Phillies are picking 13. He may have just avoided a deadly fate by going to Pittsburgh, so good for him. Maybe that's why he tanked a couple of his starts. There is another guy I want to talk about, very local to the people that live in New Jersey that are going to listen to this. Bishop Eustace Prep has put out quite a few or a couple pitchers in the MLB the last few years, and they will most likely put out another one in Jared Salamento.
Anthony
Big,
Salamento.
what's up?
Anthony Salamento?
Yeah, Anthony Salamento. Thank you. Big lefty, throws 95 to 97. My uncles were actually talking about him. They follow a lot of high school baseball, and they kind of make it a point to go watch his starts. So I think he was the 55th ranked overall prospect last time I checked. Is he still there?
30.
30?
30.
All right. Well, that should tell you, how much he's climbed. Yeah, big kid, strong arm, left-handed, which is a key for scouts. And this dude can really throw the ball. He can really go back and get it. He does have a bit of an underdeveloped breaking ball, I believe it is. It might be a changeup, actually. Yeah, his changeup's a little lower, which is going to keep him, outside of the top 10, top 15. But even as a prep guy, a pitcher, he's ranked pretty high. You don't usually see a lot of high schoolers ranked that high, particularly hitters. It's harder for a high school hitter to make the adjustment than pitchers, because pitchers really are just repetition of mechanics and arm strength, whereas hitters is actually getting base hits and hitting a baseball. I think it's the hardest thing to do in sports.
Yeah, hitting a baseball, I 100% agree with you. I said 100% twice on this show, just so everybody knows. It's like my catchphrase at this point. We're going to be doing some more of this draft stuff the way we're doing it here, where one of us will take a topic and run with it. Like I said, Ryan's got way more knowledge on the draft prospects than I do, so I have no reason to sit here and fake it. Just going to let him run with it.
Yeah, so the Phillies, if everything fell, 1 through 3, like everything fell in order in terms of how the prospects are ranked versus where they're picked, Phillies would get Harry Ford, who's a catcher from, I think he's from North Cobb, Georgia, but he's from one of those, North Cobb, East Cobb. All the Cobbs down there raise great baseball programs. They're insane. We don't need a catcher. So that's not likely to happen. However, in baseball, people, organizations tend to just draft the best player available because there's no guarantee that you're ever going to make it to the majors anyway, which brings me to my next topic. And I didn't write anything down. Sorry. So this is going to catch you by surprise. People like Kyler Murray, where they're two sport athletes. Russell Wilson's done this too. They were drafted in baseball and decided to go football. Do you agree with their decision, and what would you do?
So I think it's really circumstantial. So like if Kyler Murray or Russell Wilson were going to be on, the Rangers or the Athletics day one opening day roster and it was a guaranteed situation, I'd say I probably go baseball in that scenario. But because there's a process when you get drafted in baseball, they want to see you against their pitching. They want to see you against the guys who are also trying to get to the big leagues and stuff like that. Or even if you're a pitcher, see what you can do against the competition at the plate. Whereas in the NFL, Russell Wilson and Kyler Murray were starting football games week 1. So I think it's really circumstantial. Like if you're going to be that good of a football player, go play football. But if you're the kind of baseball player where they're going to be like, yeah, opening day, like you're my guy, go play baseball. So it's circumstantial in my opinion.
Yeah, and as I've brought up in multiple episodes, only 23 players in MLB history have made their MLB debut the same year that they were drafted. However, if you think about the difference between baseball and football, all of baseball's money is guaranteed. So when you sign those big deals, especially for Kyler Murray, who was a top 10 pick, he went 9 overall. I don't remember what year he was drafted. Was it 2018, 2019?
2018, I think.
Went 9 overall to the Oakland Athletics. And all that money that he would have signed for is guaranteed. And he would have been playing a sport where his body just would have held up longer, especially as a quarterback. You're taking all kinds of hits. Your body's breaking down. What's your take on that?
Yeah, when you think about it in that aspect, absolutely. I think the more not intelligent decision, it's again circumstantial. It's all about passion. Like if I were that good of a ball player, would I want to play baseball or football? I'd probably want to go play baseball, but they might like football more. It's all circumstantial, but you're probably right. Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson, 12, 13, 15 seasons maybe where they maybe could have gotten 20 in the majors. Like who knows?
All right. So the real question is, you're the number one overall pick as a quarterback. You, Bill Brandt, are a number one overall pick as a quarterback and the number one overall pick as an MLB outfielder. Which one are you choosing?
Baseball. I'm choosing baseball. I love baseball.
Even with the difficult process in place?
Yeah. And it's crazy because baseball players are away from home more than any other sport, except for maybe no, it's definitely baseball. But still, just the passion that I feel for the game, the way I love the game, it'd be baseball. And it wouldn't even be that much of a discussion for me. Like I wouldn't go back to my parents and be like, "What do you guys think I should do?"
No. I would say baseball before football came out of the guy's mouth. And the way that I look at it is, as a number one overall pick specifically, but as a first round pick, in the NFL, in the MLB, even in the NHL, the organizations will give you so many chances to succeed until they've worn you dry. We've seen it where first overall picks, first round picks, even just, they're given every opportunity possible to succeed. And in baseball, it's the opposite, with so many levels, the Gulf Coast League, the instructional league, the low single A, the high single A, the double A, the triple A. I'm sure I missed a few. That you're given every opportunity to fail. Like, okay, you have to do very well to move up to the next level, and then you have to do very well to move up from that level. Whereas if you move up, a couple levels and then you stink, you're a career minor leaguer, and that's why I believe it is so much harder to make the MLB than it is any other professional league. And people look at it like, oh, there's like 40 rounds in the MLB draft. There's plenty of players that are going to make it. It's not entirely true.
No.
Not even a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the Phillies have what, 4 first round prospects that just don't seem like big leaguers right now in their minor league organization. So I mean, yes, it's harder. Sorry.
You're talking about Randolph, Moniak, Kingery, and
come on, there's a fourth one.
Hazley
was a first rounder, yeah.
Yeah, no, but who's the fourth guy?
That's not who I'm talking about, though. Now Bohm is up. Stott, it just moved to double A. I don't know. 3 off the top of our heads that we know of for sure, but I'm pretty sure there's a fourth one.
I'm sure there's probably plenty.
But yeah, there's probably more than just the 4. But even with all the processes and stuff, the way I love the game, I feel like I'd be out in baseball, hands down baseball.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as much as, I like talking football, I like watching football, playing baseball to me, that's a passion. That's a lifestyle that I could easily get into.
Yeah.
So, but that's kind of where I sit with that. Do you have any other surprise topics you want to hit me with for this week?
The Phillies scored 17 runs 3 days ago and haven't played since. They played tonight. They started an hour. How many runs they score over the next 5 games?
12.
I got 10. I got to score 10 over the next 5 games.
That was absolutely maybe you might see that 2 more times this year, especially with Didi and Bryce still out. Does Bryce come back tonight?
It's a really easy way to check that.
Yeah, because I mean he was destined to come off the IL Wednesday. So if that's the case, then maybe we see him back in the lineup today. Who knows?
That'd be nice. He's on my fantasy team, so it'd be really nice. It doesn't look like he's in the lineup now.
That doesn't surprise me. I said weeks ago that Gregorius, Romuto, and Harper should have all sat for. Yeah. They should have all been on the IL right away, so that way these injuries don't linger into the important months like July, August, September.
And I totally agree. If he's not 100%, fine, take him off the IL, put him on the bench, but don't let him play.
Yeah. For sure. But that's going to do it here this week for BSing Sports. Stay tuned. We are trying to work, a Facebook Live scenario where for, a few minutes of us recording, we go on Facebook Live too, or some aspect like that. Maybe we do a live show like what Jake did the other week. And Bill and I are going to play a game next week. I'm not sure what the game is yet. I'll develop one, but we're gonna play a game next week. So stay tuned.
All right, guys. As always, subscribe, hit that like button, leave us comments like John did. We can do the questionnaire situation, but we appreciate all of you who keep listening. Thank you so much, and have a good day.
Yep, take it easy.
Another